Hello there, thank you for being here. We're continuing with the program Art Connecting between history, media, and the art market. Today we have Lisa Long here. Very happy to have you. Lisa worked for the Julia Stoschek Foundation, which is one of the leading time-based collections in the world, between 2018 and 2025. After that, she started her own curatorial agency, Companion Culture, which provides, I would say, supervises the whole process from conceiving an exhibition to programming, implementing, etc. So if you need advice on that, she's available. She has curated many video exhibitions, of course, At Dawn, A Fire in My Belly, and After Images are some of these. And I thought it would be very interesting to invite Lisa because I think that as a curator, I find curating time-based art always challenging. And I think it's a nice connection between curating, collecting, and display video art. And I also was interested because her way of curating the collection or displaying video art deals a little bit with the cinematic, the narrative element. So she's going to talk about, as the title, a sensual montage, which is a very nice title. So I leave Lisa to you, and after that, after her intervention, I will ask 2 or 3 questions, and then we can open the discussion to anyone who's interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Paco, for the very generous, warm welcome. I wanted to say thank you to ARTVILNIUS and also to Emilia for the immaculate organization of these talks and also the trip so far. It's my first time being in Vilnius, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Yesterday I had the chance to go to Kaunas as well and see the biennial, so I'm really getting a sense of the art scene here, and it's very, very lovely. So yes, I'm Lisa Long. I am a curator and a writer, and I worked for the Julia Stoschek Foundation for 7 years, which is a time-based arts collection, private time-based arts collection, founded and run by Julia Stoschek. I'm now doing my own curatorial agency, as Paco said, and we can talk about that another time. Today I wanted to focus, I know my title says curating, but actually I thought I would focus a little bit more on what it means to build a collection of time-based art. There's something mostly missing in this fair, and that is moving image. And that has a reason, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about those reasons. And I wanted to also engage with the audience. I know it's a little bit tricky amongst all the booths and all the visitors, which is beautiful to see all of them coming in today. But if you do have questions at any time, we have enough microphones to go around. Paco can reach them to you, and you can ask your questions while the talk unfolds, because I'm actually going to start with a little survey of the audience, just to see who I'm speaking with. So I guess my first question is, to the people in the audience, who has bought art before? Okay. Who has bought video art before? Okay. And who is a curator? A gallerist? And who is a visitor interested in art or an artist? Great. Okay, so we have a mix of everyone. And I guess, yeah, one of the reasons So I'll talk a little bit about the foundation first, because I think that's a good way in. The Julia Stoschek Foundation was founded in 2002 and by Julia Stoschek, who decided that there was something missing in exhibitions, in museums mainly, that there was always this room at the end of the space. There was always this room or this box kind of next to the toilet where you would go in and there would be video. And the sound would be so-so, and you kind of were away from all the rest of the artworks. And it just didn't feel like it was very intentional, or it was done with as much care as other parts of the exhibition. So she's decided to focus on this and started collecting this media, and then opened 2 spaces that I had the chance to curate over the past 7 years and kind of work through all of the collections. So I'm actually going to be showing just a few images. There's no particular order to them, but just so you get a sense of kind of the spatial aspects and the different elements of what goes into both collecting and showing time-based art, because the idea of presentation really goes in hand with the idea of collecting as well. Let's see. So just to give a little bit of context maybe, the first group of images is from the first 2 years I was working there, and it was an ensemble of solo exhibitions as well as solo presentations and screenings and performances that took place. So I've added the names of the artists to the images, but I'll kind of just leave you at that. So what does it mean to collect time-based art? I guess maybe we start with the question, what is time-based art? Time-based art is all artworks that have a duration in them. And when I say duration, it's like when you look at the work title or when you look at the little label next to the work, what does it say? And if there's time in that label, for me, it's a time-based artwork. Some people might argue photography is a time-based art. I might belong to those people, but opinions differ on that. And the reason for me why photography would be included is because in the production of the work, there is a time to the apparatus of the camera. But other than moving image, there's also sound. There is digital works, VR, AR, XR, all of the new technologies. Obviously, moving image is often shown in mixed media formats, in large-scale installations, and I would argue there are also other forms of time-based art, maybe related more to natural elements such as water or air or light, that can be included in that. So it can get more expansive as you think, as you go along. So when we have artworks that you can't just put on the wall, or that means you can't just store in a depot, like in a painting storage in a museum, you have to take other things into consideration of what it means to display this work and to store this work. And by storing it, it's also a form of conservation. So for display, again, as I was saying, like the foundation was started because there was always this little room somewhere, or there was this space. And what would it mean to show this media in it's dedicated space where the audience already knows from the beginning what they are going to see? Because knowing that changes the mode of approach, it changes the expectations, and time-based art takes time. So you can't just go and see it at once. You can't see the whole work in one time. You need to sit and kind of go through everything. And you can decide if you stay or if you go. But kind of creating an environment and an atmosphere to really encounter the work. And that's kind of, I guess, where my job as a curator comes in. And that's what my original talk was a little bit more about, which I'm going to weave in, but thinking about this idea of dramaturgy, of how you walk through an exhibition, the pathway, the sequence of works that unfold that remain maybe surprising or interesting, because the other thing about showing video art is that if you see many, many videos after the next and they're all displayed in the same way, it can become very monotonous and it can become repetitive. So the idea is, how can we create environments where moving image is embedded within them? I will move forward just a little bit. Oh, wait. Continue. Continue. Yeah. Continue. More. Okay, now we can, oh, that's great. So we just went through many different images by an exhibition by Pauline Baudry and Renate Lorenz, and if you can see, every room had a very different feeling to them, and that depends on the color of the space, it depends on carpeting, and it depends on how the video installation is presented. Is it projected? Is it on a screen? Is it on the wall or on a piece of wood like this? What kind of seating is there? So all of these things play a role when it comes to presenting the work. But also for this work, for example, what would it mean to collect this work? What happens when, you know, we don't have the presentation possibilities that are like this, that are the ideal way of presenting the work? So the artists who create a manual, so to say, or have a way of installing the work, they come up with perhaps different options of what would be possible or what would be ideal. And when a work is collected in this way, these are all conversations that we have before. So we start with talking to the gallerist if there is one, or talking directly with the artist if there isn't a gallery. And we talk through the different scenarios of what the work can look like, what is allowed, what isn't allowed. You know, again, we start with the ideal situation and then we work backward. Then we also talk about things like what kind of projector is needed, what kind of media is needed. Can that media change if the media is outdated, or if it becomes obsolete, or if there are new and better media, perhaps. So those are, you know, in the future, in 50 years from now, we might be able to show a work like this very differently. Is that allowed? So if the artist is living, we have the privilege of speaking with them about these things, and there's a long questionnaire, very detailed with different questions that also museums around the world, public museums around the world use to figure out these questions of conservation and preservation about the work. They're nice, no? The flowers? And after that, then we have to consider of how the work is conserved while it's not shown. So what kind of hardware is it preserved on? And usually when we buy a work, or when the foundation buys a work, or when collections, people who buy time-based work, they will receive a form of hard drive. That can be a USB stick, that can be an actual, just like a hard drive that you hook up to your computer. It can be a server if the work is massive. And depending on what the work is, it's very complex. So, you know, if it's a live simulation, that is much more complex than a single channel video. And so we have to talk with a conservator while acquiring the work about how to keep the software and the hardware legible, not only now, but also in the future. And so to do that, there's backup systems that kind of get implemented in the collection and the foundation that we use, and that also big museums use, to make sure that the work remains legible. And one of the first rules is everything needs to be digitized. Even if you buy a 35mm film, a 16mm film, an 8mm film, the work, the content or the data on the film, we will digitize it. And that digitization will be spread across 3 different servers. And there's a 3 archive or pillar archive system with 3 different servers in case one server fails, there's another copy, there's another copy. Along with the digital copy, there is also a kind of a media storage. And the media storage has very specific, in the case where I was working, it was very, it was best practice. It was international museum standard. It was a space maybe as big as this talking space. It was climatized. It was it was filtered, so there was no dust, and it was grounded, so there was no electrical charge, because electrical charge might damage the hardware. And kind of erase, or video especially. Video is extremely, or old VHS tapes are extremely tricky to conserve and not very long lasting. Film is much easier, and digital copies are actually also much easier to conserve. So it has very specific conditions to preserve the work in the space itself, the hardware that shows this work, that holds this work. And there's a 24-hour, I don't know how you call it, a box where you put something in and you let it sit, and then you take it into the other side. So it's like an acclimatization room for it to get used to and to get rid of all of the static it might bring in from the outside, because static and electricity was really kind of the biggest fear of bringing that into the storage. So as you can tell, it's very complex. And there are a lot of steps, and I went into such detail because I think it's often not talking about, it's forgotten, but it is one of the reasons why this media is not collected so often. There are other reasons as well, but I think for kind of the long-term conservation, is really one of the reasons why it's tricky. I do think that moving forward with all of the technological advancements and the way that we deal with data, it will hopefully become easier. Also, the blockchain might change things. So it's still, for me, it's an amazing media to collect, because when you do, you have to really dedicate yourself to it. And I think that dedication is something very special. It allows a very unique relationship with the artist and also with the gallerist, and kind of this form of engagement. I'm just going to move on so we can see a few more images. Mr. Soundman, can we... Continue. So I guess we'll just stop here again. Yeah. So we touched on some of the moments of acquisition and kind of the processes. There's one more thing I do want to talk about in regards to that, is editioning. And again, we have this hard drive that you get, right? And on the hard drive is a digital file. And this digital file is theoretically endlessly reproducible. So it is not unique in that sense. So what does that do to our artwork? How do we deal with that reproducibility? And we always laugh because we say often we don't necessarily buy a physical artwork. We buy the rights to show an artwork. So we get a contract, and on the contract is very specifically stated how we can show it, where we can show it. Can we loan it to other people? Can it be on display elsewhere? All of these things need to be discussed and taken care of before. And that is something maybe to the gallerists in the room that is perhaps often forgotten, or also is just because they're not dealing with these media so often. Maybe they're not aware of this form of contract making and the manuals that can come along with that, kind of the installation manuals. And it's something I feel there needs to be more workshops and more education on. Also, the kind of file that you then give to the collector that is the right quality, that is the kind of guarantees a specific standard. I can give one example. We bought a work by David Wojnarowicz for an exhibition that will be coming later on, and the file looked very grainy when we installed it for the first time in an exhibition. And it was a digital copy of a 16 millimeter film, so it had been transferred. And we looked back, and this was the copy we got from the gallery. And then we asked a museum who also had the film, what does your copy look like? Is this the quality of your copy? And so we had a conversation with them, and they said, yes, it's also the quality of our copy, and we bought it also from the gallery. And I was like, I'm not sure this, if you go and see the film, this is not what the film looks like. So we spoke to the gallery, and it ended up that we went back and we did a redigitization of the film to get a higher quality or a better quality video file, which we then shared among all of the people who had collected the video, so or the film that was turned into a digital video. So even then, you need to be very vigilant and kind of aware of how the media can deteriorate a little bit over time, because with every copy, the quality becomes just a little bit less. And when you send out an exhibition copy, it is an exhibition copy. And that exhibition copy comes with, like any loaned work, also a contract that says at the end you will delete or you will destroy the hard drive or you will send it back. Because it's not the original, but the file is actually, a reproduction of the file that we have. So yes, these are some of the kind of nitty-gritty things. And then, again, from the contract and that moment of buying, there are usually multiple editions. What does that mean? So editioning started in the early 20th century. It was developed, well, I guess maybe earlier with bronze casting and things like that. But especially in the gallery world, it began with photography and also with film. And so a gallerist was trying to figure out how to make money off of selling films, because film was a more democratic medium. It was supposed to be shown and circulated largely and widely. And so by editioning it, it created a type of scarcity, which we know becomes a little bit more exclusive, or the idea that it is exclusive, and our art market is also based on that sense of exclusivity. And video was born out of that, I guess, as well. So video is perhaps the most common imagery we have today. We are surrounded by moving image. We are surrounded by videos, whether they are made by ourselves and are shown, on social media or at home, or if they are made with an artistic intention and sold. But they're the most highly regulated image in the world, because sometimes there is only one edition, which is kind of unheard of, especially because the media is mostly reproducible. And usually there are 3 to 5 editions plus artist proofs when it comes to video. So there's only 3 people in the world then that have the right to show the work at the same time, and also to loan the work at the same time. The artist can obviously say, well, we're showing it at the same, 3 museums are showing it at the same time, and this wonderful museum asked, I'm going to show my artist proof, or I'm going to show another copy. Is that okay? I think nobody would say no, but it's supposed to create this type of regulation so that you can manage how it's shown. Again, on the contract, we have the right to show the work. We don't actually own a physical work. So those are some of the things when you move into collecting time-based art that need to be taken into consideration, and that kind of grow over time, I guess. And to maybe draw a bridge to showing and presenting time-based art, what that means is, as I was saying, when it's brought in, we talk about the ideal forms of showing the work and the ideal installations that one can have. And that is also what creates the foundation for the exhibitions, because usually with a video installation, there are specific installation requirements, and those need to be taken into consideration with the space. Is the space big enough? Do we have the budget to buy that amount of carpet? Can we paint the walls? Do we have the right projectors? All of these things. I'm going to ask you to maybe come through and change it again. continue? We'll move slowly forward. We'll stop here. Great, thank you. So, for example, a work like this is maybe one of the most complex works that I've ever installed. And it took up a lot of space. It was the only artwork in this space. And it was by Wang Shui. It was called Weak Pearl. And it was a new production for Wang Shui's solo exhibition at the Julia Stoschek Foundation in Berlin in 2019. And Wang Shui's exhibition was really much based on this idea of sensual montage that I had in my title for this talk. So what does that mean exactly? And over the many years that I've been working with sound and moving image artists and performance artists, what became very clear is that the way that a visitor moves through the exhibition is as important as the way the work is installed. And that there is a kind of a guiding sequence, a montage, as I call it, and it's very much based on Sergei Eisenstein's theories of montage and the way that he describes how editing a film and putting images into sequence have an emotional trigger, have an emotional effect, can create stories, can create also propaganda. So they can be misleading, they can manipulate you. And when curating time-based works in this way, I feel because there is music, because there is atmosphere, there is light, and moving image, you can create specific types of manipulations as well, and you can lead the viewer on a really dramaturgical path through the exhibition, and there can be reveals. So when do you see what? Do you turn a corner? Is everything immediately visible to you? Or do you have to kind of walk around something and you can already hear it and there's tension building up? Or if you have a really loud work with tons of light and loud sound, do you follow that with another really loud work with lots of light and loud sound, or do you kind of withdraw, do you draw back and you position a more quiet work there that maybe lets the visitor recuperate a little bit or kind of gives a different feeling to it? So it's a lot about creating a sensual montage in the sense of creating a sequence of images, a sequence of encounters that trigger specific types of affect and specific feelings within the visitor so that they can understand not only the works themselves, but get an idea of how the exhibition unfolds, I guess, over time. And with Wang Shui, we only had 4 works over the entire ground floor of the collection, and there was 1 work in each space. And this was the final work, and so we had, in each space, we had, you could not see the work immediately. It was this kind of long reveal that you had at the end. And here, you walk in at the end and you're very far away, and because it's architectural LED with big light nodes, from a distance, you could sort of see what the image was. We were still too close. We would have actually had to been on the other side of the street to fully see the image because it was too large. And the closer we got, the more abstract it became, the more punctual the dots became, and the more it became about light, about impression, and also about the materiality of the sculpture itself. So this sculpture in particular really drew us in and provided from the distance to the proximity of its experience already a different haptic or sensual or visceral kind of encounter experience with the work. Conserving a work like this is really a nightmare. Each LED has its own electrical cable. The LED wall came from China. It used a different electrical circuit. We had to use transformers to change the electrical current to our current. We had to create a manual with 400 different cables of how to hook them up when in the future. It was 450 kilos. We built a box. How do you roll this up? There was also, what we can't see here, is there were things interwoven into the LED itself. So there was this, I'm forgetting the word, it's a rock that's paper thin and see-through, and it breaks really quickly. It looks like a crystal. And there was some other elements. So how do you touch a sculpture like this? So we built a box that was as big as the sculpture. And you can see at the bottom there's this thing on the ground, and it was about 1.5 meters on the ground. And the box was an L shape. And so the sculpture we hung it in the box down, and then put it over a bar so that the rest of the sculpture could kind of hang down like this. And we've had many museums say, we would love to loan this work. And I tell them what it would cost, not only to ship it, but to install it. And then they say, no, thank you. I'm sorry, we don't have a budget for that. So going back to when you acquire a work of time-based art, what does it mean? These are things that should be taken into consideration, because this work might not be shown for decades, actually. Single-channel video, again, much easier. If you're starting out to buy video art, please start with single channel. You know, dip your toe in. I highly encourage it. It's not an expensive media at all. Video artists, it's one of the most expensive media to produce if it's a highly produced production. But it's not sold for that much money yet. It's less expensive than painting. So please. But yeah, maybe starting with single channel, double channel also could be a good point. But yes, so I guess maybe I'll just stop there for now, because we kind of are heading towards the later end of the talk. I know Paco had a couple more questions, but I wanted to also ask the audience if they had any insights or any questions regarding collecting time-based art, presenting time-based art, preserving time-based art. We have one over here.
Thank you for this beautiful intro. I just wanted to ask what was your work like in the collection? Like who came up with ideas of the shows, and how was the process built?
Yeah, so I mean, as in any museum, you have multiple ideas and you present them with the team. And in this case, Julia Stoschek, obviously, as founder and director, has final say. So we would decide what was the best idea moving forward. The exhibitions at the foundation, there was a space in Berlin and a space in Düsseldorf. Usually there would be one large exhibition, either a big group exhibition or a large-scale solo show that went for 10 months, 9-10 months, and then there would be smaller exhibitions that were shorter, usually 4 to 5 months, so still very long. The team was very small, so we had max 10 people across both locations. I was the only curator in-house, so we would work with external curators as well. And then after that, we would start to talk, well, some of them were collection-based, and some of them weren't collection-based. Wang Shui and the whole Horizontal Vertigo exhibition that we were just going through was actually the first time that it was artists that were not represented in the collection. Many of them then were brought into the collection through these exhibitions. After this exhibition, let's see if we can move forward. We can. I'll just continue slowly because there are many more slides. After this 2-year time of not showing any collection artists, we did a very, very big collection exhibition called A Fire in My Belly. The battery must be giving up. Ah, there we go. Which was almost entirely collection artists. There were a couple non-collection artists, and showing non-collection artists in a collection exhibition is actually a way to test the artwork. What does it mean? It's a way for us to install the work and see how it's installed, how it functions, and also how the audience reacts to it. What kind of reactions does it get? So this show was very massive and started from this work. This was David Wojnarowicz's A Fire in My Belly. I'm not saying that name correctly in any way, but and this work was kind of the starting point, and that was my approach to collection shows, to take one work and build from there. And usually it was a piece that really opened up a lot of different channels, because how do you put works that were collected at very different times, that were produced between the 1960s and today, into dialogue again, and create something that's not overbearing as well, that's not illustrating a specific point, but really letting the work to individually grow and shine, but also kind of connect them to other works. So we had little pairings, for example, here. We had a photograph by Zoe Leonard, which was actually on loan, together with David Wojnarowicz's piece. They were very close friends during his time in New York. And he's very explicitly showing kind of the violence of everyday life. And she is showing this very distant view of the world from above, from this like more poetic approach. But their relationship was very, very deep. So it was, for us, interesting to kind of see how that functioned. And then here we had also, maybe it's difficult to see right now, but we had a pairing of Wilhelm Diefenbach from 1916, an early work, and a new video by Anne Imhoff that we premiered with Eliza Douglas, who's shown Whipping the Waves. And the Diefenbach is a painting of Capri, a very dramatic painting of Capri, a view from Capri, the island where Diefenbach lived, and where a lot of like tumultuous things happened, both during his time and after his time. Like there was a grotto there with wild parties and escapades and kind of bacchanalia moments and things like that. And then we have Anne Imhoff, who also, for me, it's a very violent video of this woman who's whipping this boat ramp that was built during the Second World War on the coast of Normandy. And the pairing somehow created again, a dramaturgy. It created a feeling or a connection between the works that for me, they didn't have on their own, in a way. So it's difficult because you're seeing all of these different spaces and all of these different works, but it's difficult to see there's a pathway between them as well that is very important for me, at least, to take into consideration how you move from one space to the next. But when you do get to the next space, it's also important for me that there is this new experience, that it's shown, that you see something that was different than you saw before, in a way. And the entire kind of vibe for this exhibition is, I told the team, I want this exhibition to feel like a Caravaggio. I want it to be dramatic, I want it to be violent, and it was an exhibition about violence. I want it to be filled with like sexual tension and drama. So it was very fun, and it was also a very emotional exhibition. It was during the middle of COVID. Everybody was kind of feeling existential about what it meant to live and to have a body. So it was very much an exhibition also oriented around violence against the body and how it felt. So these types of considerations, because we're a foundation when I worked there, we could react very quickly kind of to the surroundings or to the social movements around us, because our planning phase is 1 year in advance, maybe a year and a half. not longer than that, which is different from a big museum that sometimes plans 3, 4, 5 years in advance. So yeah, very long answer to your question.
Thank you. Can I just, I don't know, is there, you want to ask something? No, I'm just curious because being a public-private moving image collection, it's still quite pioneering format. So I guess Julia was learning a lot while, since she started, 2002 you said, right? And you joined 2018. So what were your landmarks in this process, at least when you joined? Were you thinking, who's your audience? You were partially I don't know, with private collections, you never know how decisions are being made. But then again, you think about well-developed German level of collecting, so it's really a serious institution. So, what were your guidelines? What was collectors' expectation from the program? How much control? Were there a lot of emotional acquisitions, or what were the influences you had to consider when you build your program?
So the way that we collect is a mix between going around and seeing exhibitions and finding new works, finding new artists that we hadn't known, and doing research and looking into the gaps that we have and the strong threads in the collection, how we can build them out. It's a very European and it's a very North American-based collection. One of my larger goals being brought on as curator and also being involved in acquisitions was to become a little bit more global. That takes a long time, actually. It's a very slow process, but it was nudged into a certain direction. And I also really liked collecting historical works, and we would do that with internal discussions. There was a collections director as well. But most of it was through emerging artists, I would say, or younger artists, video artists that we would meet, do studio visits with, either through research or through going to a fair like this, which we would go to a lot of fairs and we would never buy anything because there would never be any video. Or very little video. There used to be much more video at art fairs 10 years ago. Also, yeah. Maybe a whole other talk. So it was more about really speaking with artists and getting in contact with artists. The audiences in Berlin and Düsseldorf are very different. Düsseldorf is a very dedicated art audience. People take it seriously. They love the collection. They know the collection for many, many years. It brings a bit of sparkle to Düsseldorf. The depot is there. It provided something that was not accessible anywhere else in Germany, and it was in Düsseldorf, and people in Düsseldorf love that. And they are perhaps also age-wise, a little bit older than the audience in Berlin. In Berlin, you have a very international, less dedicated, much younger, scene-y, critical, political audience who needs a little bit more. It needs a different kind of approach. Like A Fire in My Belly was a great exhibition for Berlin in that way. It hit a lot of the triggers. And a Düsseldorf audience is much more dedicated. They'll spend more time, and they like to go in. They'll read the kind of the art historical background and context on things. So that's taken into consideration. And the other thing that we take, with the audience, is that the ticketing was always, Düsseldorf was free, so you could come back always. Now it costs €5, which is almost free. And in Berlin, it costs €5. I think now it costs 10. But your ticket was valuable, gültig. It ran until 6 months of the exhibition. So within those 6 months, you could come back as many times as you want. And the amazing thing is that people do come back. If you offer them that access, they come back. Because they know, and we tell them, you cannot see the entire exhibition in one go. You have to, and when you're done, because your body is filled with sound and light and different images, and you are saturated. So that is also in this idea of a sensual montage, the idea of creating a pace, of creating a dramaturgy, really also has to do with kind of the overwhelm of the viewer, of the visitor, and how you react to that. So offering that multiple showing is, I find very valuable. And if people ask me who show a lot of moving image or who want to specialize in moving image, or starting new foundations, or starting spaces because they have a collection of moving image, I say highly recommend offering this multiple visit, even if it's just for a month, because they don't feel comfortable doing it longer. It's very important. Because I think some of the exhibitions take you actually 15 hours, or like even if it takes 7 hours, it's too much. So
I have some questions. Thank you for your illuminating talk. I'll do the abstract. You talked about curating, you talked about collecting, and you talked about technology. So I totally agree with you, because very often when I see video installations or video works, for me it's what you said about a very simple, repetitive installation. And very often we just see that it's a white cube room, darkened and separated, and that's it, and projected to the wall. So I really appreciated in the different kind of images that you showed this idea of montage, dramaturgy, the cinematic. So how do you think, because I find that sometimes difficult as a curator to deal with video, especially when you have some artists that you're forced to have like a closed, darkened installation, especially when it's a group show, when you're not only exhibiting video, but also painting, sculpture, whatever. I find it a little bit disruptive. Can you exchange a little bit on that?
I don't find it disruptive.
Okay.
I think it adds poetic value, and it adds complexity. As a curator, when you mix media like this, sound is often overlooked and not talked about, and the sound is sometimes more important than the image, especially if it's around other works, because it will fill the room, and it will give the entire space a vibe. And again, going back to Eisenstein's idea of montage, he talked about sound as well and about manipulation, and you can beautifully create a space that, the artwork shown in a different way would not have that kind of vibe because of if the sound were different. So I think it's about pairing them really carefully. And with LED screens now, you can show in daylight, which is not an issue. So that, it's a budget issue because LED screens are very expensive to install, but or to rent and to buy. But we can show it. I personally love being in dimly lit spaces. What I don't like about the white cube often is that I feel exposed and too visible. So as a viewer, for me, being in an exhibition where I can kind of become part of the architecture, where I can become part of the atmosphere, I really love that. But yeah, it can totally disrupt an exhibition, to speak to your point. But I think it depends on the curatorial will, or like also what the artist is interested in doing with the work. That needs to be taken into consideration, and it can be very easily paired.
Yeah, I think with video we have basically two kinds of viewing, what I call concentrated viewing, very often in a dark room. You sit there, you watch, and then what I call more comprehensive viewing, when it's just an installation, maybe in a plasma, whatever, that you don't necessarily see the whole work, but bits of it, and then you continue. A second aspect you talked about was collecting editions. I agree with you that sometimes collecting video can be a little bit challenging for collectors, because sometimes it's a little bit confusing. 2 artist proofs, edition of 3, edition of 5, edition of 20. Then you also talked about scarcity. So if I buy edition 5.5, it's not 10,000 euros, but maybe 15,000 euros. So my question is maybe a little bit utopic, but is there a way we can systematize that?
I don't know. I don't know it's necessary.
Okay.
I think what would be great is if everybody could use, if there was these like standardized forms of contract making and also manual creation for how to install the work and how to preserve the work. Those tools exist. EAI, for example, has great templates for things like this, or we also share sometimes our manual with other people who are curious about how a manual like this. Yes, there should be more education. I think things will change as technology changes. As I said, the blockchain might become more interesting for video work in a form of creating a trail of sorts. But I don't know. Isn't the nice thing that it is kind of flexible?
Yeah, I find it...
I mean, again, I'm for standardized, or I'm for a contract and for a manual. Those things I find most important. The discussion about editioning is a discussion for me between the artist and the gallerist. Mm-hmm. If a work costs 250,000 euros to make, which many do, if depending on what they are, or let's say they cost 100,000 euros to make, and you can only sell it for 45, you might make 5 editions. Otherwise, it will be tricky. Like those kinds of considerations. If it's just imagery off of your phone, and you can sell the work for 10 or 15, maybe you don't need 5 editions. Maybe you can only do 3. So I like that flexibility. I think it gives people agency to kind of both scale their productions and also scale their output.
It's I find it interesting because you talked about certain topics that reveal the complexity of video, because I myself as a curator, I wanted to show a certain video work and I couldn't, because it was the copies, they were being shown at the same time at different museums. So that's something that you can come across. So the last element I would like to ask you is, you talked about obsolescence, which is fascinating. I have like a couple of videos I bought, and then I have a disc, DVD, I don't know what, so it can be a little bit challenging. What I find challenging, which I encountered, is the what I would say it's the ethical part of conservation. What you talked about, is the artist dead? Does the artist allow us to restore it with different material, whatever, which is very, that's really a hot topic for me, really, and has to do a lot with ethics. No? So.
I mean, collecting has a lot to do with ethics. So, ideally, it's done with responsibility. These standardized manuals with these questions of how to preserve a work, of how to show the work, of how to replace certain parts. Like with a Namjoon Paik TV sculpture, you will not be able to replace certain TVs. But believe me, those museums have bought as many of the TVs of the same type as they possibly can, that they keep in a very specific storage in case it does, so that they can replace it with the original media, because changing the media with a Namjoon Paik might not be possible. With other works, it might be less consequential. It might be, if it's an LED screen, as we have like a flat screen TV like this, or an LED screen with little nodes, might not be so consequential, for example. But the conservators for time-based art that we work with are amazing, and they have a fun job.
Well, I also find my experiences, it depends a little bit on the artist. Some artists don't really care. You talk to them and they say, oh, use this, that, and others are, you need to have the James Brown, vinyl from 1979 or whatever, so it's...
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
As always, it's a conversation with the artist, and the artist needs to, if they are capable, really needs to be involved, because they are the makers and they understand how the work needs to be shown. And we should also respect that as much as possible, now and in the future. One more thing I wanted to say about editioning, because with this different possibilities of work being shown, also with things like NFTs happening. A lot of artists who work with moving image have a gallery, and they also have a distribution platform, which means that there are editions that are sold and registered, but you can rent or lease an exhibition copy from, let's say, Video Data Bank or Electronic Arts Intermix, and many others, Lux and all the other distribution companies, for a certain amount of time, which hits a little bit sometimes of a different circuit. So it's geared more towards a film programming culture and a film programming circuit. And the editioning model is really a contemporary arts model. It's not a film model in any way. And there's strangely, even though it's the same work, there is a big distinction, and an important one, I guess, as well.
If anyone wants to make a question to Lisa, she's happy to take your questions.
Or just after, I'll be around. I wanted to say thank you for listening amidst all this busy fair life, and have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.